Hello everyone, this is Hypnosis Help number 1 with me, Silver Hypnosis. And the point of this, the goal of these videos, and I do intend to do more than one, is to help people, both people who want to be subjects and people who want to be hypnotists. I feel like there's a lot of videos that don't really address a lot of the problems that happen, because just in my experience of looking at my channel and looking at the people who comment, and I see a lot of people who say things like, "Oh, it doesn't work, therefore it doesn't work for me, therefore it must be fake," or "These people are lying," or "I don't know why it's not working," or what have you. And I feel like it's a good idea to address some of the repeat themes that, or I should say, repeat problems and how you fix them. So for this one, I'm going to focus mostly on people who want to be subjects who might have some problems entering trance, people who have some problems staying in trance, what have you. So let's start with the first one, the first problem that I see a lot of people, and they say, a lot of times what I hear is, I listened to it, I was relaxed, but I never went into trance. And the question I usually ask to that is, were you sitting there expecting something? Because a lot of hypnosis, at least in my experience, has, I think, almost the downside at this point of people expect trance to be like something that they know when they're in. They expect it to be almost like, I don't even know, like it's something that you know when you're in and know when you're not. I guess they expect like a direct, very obvious break between when they're hypnotized and when they're awake, and it's just not like that. So a lot of times what I have is that people will keep themselves out of trance. People will keep themselves out of trance because they will be sitting there, and instead of focusing on what's happening and letting the hypnotist guide them into trance, they're focusing more on trying to create what in their mind they think this is what trance feels like. It's a lot. I've had this happen multiple times where I've had a subject who will say, I asked them and they say, "Well, I was trying to get into trance," and I say, "Well, go back into it. Don't go into it saying this is what trance feels like, and if I don't get to this state, I'm not in trance, essentially." Because trance, it's an altered state, but it's not like it is a natural state. It's not a state of mind where there's a clean break in between them. And if you go into it saying, this is what it feels like, this is what I'm going to feel like, and you don't get that, you'll actually keep yourself out of trance. You'll stop yourself from entering a deeper trance. Because you're focusing too much. You're keeping your conscious mind focused too much on what it has to feel like in order for this to work. It's kind of the mindset of, this won't work unless I feel like this. If that makes sense. And I see that a lot. And once you let go of this idea, once you get rid of the idea that it's not hypnosis if it doesn't feel the way you expect it to, you'll find yourself entering trance a lot easier. You'll find yourself entering a state where it's not so difficult to enter it, and you'll get better at it. I see this a lot with people who continue to try things, but they don't think about why it's not working. Like, specifically, I get this a lot with transformation videos. And a lot of this, when I talk to them, is this problem of, I expected it to be this, and it wasn't that, and so, they didn't enter the state deep enough because they kept themselves out of it, because their conscious mind was constantly active. And hypnosis at its core is bypassing the conscious mind and entering the subconscious, and suggesting things to the subconscious. And if the subconscious is focused so much on right and wrong, it's not going to work. A better way to explain this too, another facet of this problem is, even if you bypass the conscious mind, even if we've quieted the conscious mind and we've entered a light state of trance, a lot of times what keeps people from going deeper is they've told their subconscious, because the subconscious mind only accepts suggestions on a pass-fail basis. It either accepts everything or it accepts nothing. So the subconscious, when you send a suggestion, for example, when you tell people to go deeper, or you tell people to relax more, or you give them other suggestions, if the subconscious is saying, am I in trance, yes or no, and it will match based on what you believed trance would feel like, and it'll say, okay, I'm not in trance, therefore these suggestions don't work. I've had that before. And so basically what you need to do is really tell yourself that you don't have any expectations. Don't go into it with expectations saying this is what trance feels like, this is what it's going to happen. Don't tell yourself that. Instead say, I'm going to be hypnotized, I will be in trance, but don't tell yourself what the trance is going to be like, because that will actually keep you out of trance. If your conscious mind doesn't do it, your subconscious will, because your subconscious will compare it to what it thinks trance should feel like, and it will reject it otherwise. So that's that's actually a very simple problem to solve, right there. Is going in without any expectations. That's the first way to improve yourself, or to improve not yourself really, but improve your, I don't know how to put it, almost like, I guess your experience would be the best way to put it. The best way you can do it is to go in without any expectations. Second big thing we're going to talk about is rapport. I find this all the time, and it's especially good if you're the kind of person who has like either anxiety issues, or you don't trust people easily, or even if you've had a bad experience before with hypnosis, and some people do, generally what I found is the most important thing in any hypnotist-subject relationship is rapport. And what that means is you need to have a trust between the two. I can guarantee you that half of my videos wouldn't be nearly as successful if people didn't trust that they worked. Because when you go into something and say it's not going to work, it doesn't. And that's just basic psychology. If you say, I can't do this, it doesn't matter how easy the task is, you will never accomplish it, because you're telling yourself you'll never accomplish it. But if you have, trust issues, or you have anxiety issues, you can't force yourself to go into trance. You can't force people to go into trance. What you can do is build up trust between the two. If you're a hypnotist and dealing with someone like this, it's imperative that you stress comfort, that you stress the fact that they are safe and are not going to be, they don't have to worry, is the point. If you are somebody with those issues, and I myself had to deal with this because when I was younger and I started doing this, I had a good number of anxiety issues, and that kept me from getting pretty far myself. The thing that you need to focus on is the idea that you need to find somebody who you trust to work with. You want to work with somebody who you trust, who you know you can work with. I hear this statement being said that, anyone can be hypnotized by anyone else, and while true in theory, in practice, it's not that simple. In practice, it usually comes down to whether or not somebody's going to trust you to work with you. Trust you to work with them. That's basic. It's kind of like, would you trust a mechanic who didn't look like a mechanic, who didn't act like a mechanic, to fix your car? Would you trust some guy, some random person, to fly a plane? No. When it comes to hypnosis, it's the same thing. You want to find somebody who you trust to do it. Because it's a working relationship. It is a give and take. Somebody is responding to suggestions by somebody else, and if they don't trust those suggestions, they won't work. Let's see. The other thing that needs to be probably said first is one thing that, I guess the best way to put it is, one thing that I find a lot is people saying, this works for other people, but it doesn't work for me. Especially with audio files, I find. And the reason for that is, well, you'll need to find somebody with a voice you like. There are lots of other hypnotists online that I can't listen to, not because they're bad. In fact, they're very good. I just don't like their voice personally. And it goes back to the comfort thing. It goes back to what's best for you. My voice is not going to be everyone's cup of tea. It just isn't going to be. Some people like overwhelmingly female voices. Some are like overwhelmingly male voices. Some like people who have a certain style. For example, my style is the way I've had it put is it's very wordy. And the reason for that is because when I started doing hypnosis, I started via email. And I would hypnotize people via email, and I moved from that into doing it by text over like Instant Messenger, like Twitter. I've done it. And because of that, my scripts tend to be I write them as though I was going to, if I sent this to somebody, I write them as though if I was going to send it to somebody, they could read that and go into trance, essentially. And that's how I write my scripts. That's how I do, that's my style of writing, or my style of trance, essentially. And there are lots of other people who use a very different style. A lot of the big ones, on YouTube anyway, tend to emphasize a very, spoken style, where they're clearly used to working with people in person. And that works for a lot of people. So there's nothing wrong with that. But the point of that is, find somebody who meets whose style is compatible with what you want. Don't go in saying, I need, this is the only person that can do this. This is the only person that can work with me. This is the only person that I can work with. Don't do that. Find somebody whose style works for you, who you're comfortable with working with, and that will make all the difference. I have seen some of who I would regard as best hypnotists have problems because they're trying to hypnotize people who, as a subject, aren't responding well to their way of engaging them. And again, some people who are really good are capable of changing their style to meet the subject's needs, but not everybody is, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just means that, as a hypnotist, you need to find someone else. As a subject, you need to find somebody you want to engage with, that you want to be, engaged. You really want to be hypnotized by, who's going to have the effects that you want. And never be afraid as a subject to say when something's not working, or say when something is not what you wanted, or what have you. Far too often I've seen people who will go along with things, but it's very obvious when it comes down when it's not legit, when it's not genuine. Especially when it comes to therapeutic hypnosis, making people feel better about themselves. I would say that personally, if you are a subject and you say, I'm having problems, address this with your hypnotist. Focus on them. Focus on improving the rapport between you. And if it's not working out, if it's not working out, they should be able to recommend you to somebody else who they trust. I have a number of people who I recommend to people who don't like my style. For example, there's always Felix. People who I recommend who don't like my style, I tend to recommend them over to to Felix or Ultra Hypnosis or Ninja, for example. All of them are great, and you should all listen to them. But they all have different styles than mine. And so, if you're looking for, any one of them, if you said, you went to them and said, hey, your style's not really what I'm looking for, they should all be able to recommend you to other people too. And that's just because, as hypnotists, we all know we all see each other doing things. We all see each other's, accounts and content, and style is important when you're a subject. Comfort is important as a subject. If you're not comfortable with one person, find someone else. If you're a, if you're a, I guess the best way to put it is if you're somebody who has really struggled, I mean this, if you're somebody who, nobody works for you, like no matter how many times you try, nobody works for you, ask yourself what you're looking for. Ask yourself why you don't think it's working, and really come to like an idea of what it would take for you for it to work. Whenever you want to do something and it doesn't work the first time, ask yourself what you can do to make it work better the second time. Does that make sense? Anyway, so this is going to be the first episode. Feel free to ask questions below in the comments. Feel free to ask suggestions for things, and I will give feedback on them. The next video is going to be for hypnotists, so if you're interested in that, I'll have the second one up shortly. Alright, thank you everybody.